oh yeah, my car feels like it runs tens. No, it doesn't. And we are back again. So today is MCM number 32. Don't even need to say why that's a special number. I thought I'd do kind of like a little mix of the AMA and a special episode for number 32. Because so many people were asking different things about the GTR, I figured I'd just do a big video on it. And being that this is MCM32, it was the perfect time to just, you know what, I'll do my story on the GTR. So I'm going to do it like kind of a new playlist called Obsessed. And I'll get into that later in the video. But this is the story, not the Fresh Prince story, but this is the story about my R32 GTR. All right, so without going too much into a story about me, I came to Australia in about 2013, and pretty much the first thing that I did was start looking for car culture, start looking to see what Australia did, in terms of car culture, because I had no idea, what Australians like other than doing burnouts in massive circles. Like that's all I knew as a new American coming to Australia. So the first thing I did was go out and, look for cars. I ended up landing at a place called Zen Garage. Justin Fox at the time was at some shop in Leichhardt, and he had, I think it was like a G35, forget what the Japanese JDM version of it is, a Skyline, and an R32 sitting in the shop. That was the first time I'd ever seen an R32 GTR in person. First time that I've ever, been able to touch it, feel it, figure out, what the lines were and everything. And yeah, it's pretty safe to say that was literally the moment I fell in love with the car. Basically, from that point, I knew it was like, this is what I'm gonna get. So I ended up buying a little Honda EG hatch to get around in. Took me, I think, 7 months of looking at different cars and trying to find out, what was wrong with it. Because at the time, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was wrong with GTRs, what to look for, what not to look for, what was wrong with the engine, all this problems of what a 32 is and what new buyers kind of don't really know. I didn't know at the time. So it took me a while to find the one I wanted. What I had to really narrow down, though, was what I wanted. At the time, I didn't necessarily want a modified car. I wanted something stock because I planned on, it's hilarious thinking back on this, but I planned on just leaving it stock and enjoying the car for what it was, because to me, it was really awesome, that I had the chance to have a piece of motoring history, because I wasn't familiar with Skylines themselves, but I knew about the racing history, and I knew about how dominant it was. I didn't necessarily know about the Australian victories it had, but I knew about the JDM Japanese victories that it had.
Now swing down the inside of the car. Johnson out on the ripple strip. It's Richards now grabbing another gear. Let's have a look at the horsepower. Has it got any horsepower? 600 brake, they claim. And
so it took me a little time to kind of wrap my head around everything and figure out what I wanted. So I wanted bone stock, untouched, unmolested, so that way I could build my own story on the car. I will say this as an interjection, I wish I didn't do that. So I went around and I was looking at, cars left and right. People were showing me stock cars that just had an exhaust or just had a Power FC or just had wheels, and nothing was really kind of piquing my interest. Like, when you find that car, you're like, that's the one. That never really happened for a while. And I knew what my budget was, and at the time, GTRs were relatively cheap, especially cheap considering the prices they are now. So my budget at the time was about 20 grand, and the top of the price range for what GTRs were going for was about 20 grand. So I ended up basically just scouring through Facebook one day, and I popped up on a for sale ad. Well, it wasn't really a for sale ad. It was just a message on a for sale ad that another guy had put up saying that he was selling a car, but it hadn't landed yet. So I messaged him and I go, "Hey, what's going on with the car? Why is it unregistered?" And going through the whole story. And he goes, "Well, look, I imported this car for my brother, and my brother bought an S2000 in the meantime, waiting for the car to get to Australia. So it's just complied, but not registered." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, do you mind if I have a look at it?" And he goes, "Yeah, no problem." So I go, "Sweet." I go, "Well, what's the chances of you actually registering it so I can, see the car driving and running?" And he goes, "Well, look, if you're committed to this, then, I'll register the car." So registered it. I went and saw it, and we went and met up at Liverpool KK's. And I know my international viewers aren't gonna know where that's at, but the local guys will. And I'm standing basically where Krispy Kreme is in the back of the parking lot, and I tried to get in a spot where the car had to drive a good distance to get to me, so I could be listening and looking. And yeah, as soon as I seen it come in the lot, I was like, sold. That's the one. I knew it. I didn't have to even look at the car. So he pulls up. I'm walking around, looking at everything. And I can we just go around the block? He's like, "Yeah." So I jump in, and I don't hit boost. I'm not gonna, go and thrash somebody's car that, one, I haven't bought, or two, they haven't said to do so. So we go around the block, and I'm just cruising along. Haven't hit boost at all. And yeah, like I said, I sold myself on the car before he had even opened his mouth. Car was bone stock, not a single modification done to it. If you count a radio as a modification, fair enough, but I'm not that much of a purist. So car had no modifications to it, no exhaust, no wheels, no nothing. Bone stock, had the boost pill in it and everything. Cruising around, and we pull up, and I come back and I go, "Yep, I'll go to the bank. I'll see you tomorrow." So he comes around to my place, drops the car off, comes to the bank with me. We do the exchange, and I've got my own 32 GTR. And I wanted gunmetal gray. I actually didn't want any other color, because when I was looking, all of the cars that I was looking at were either silver or white, which I couldn't figure out why. I was like, gunmetal gray is the GTR color. R32 GTRs is great. That's what I think of. And I was not seeing any gray ones. The ones that I'd see driving around, white, silver, or some kind of off shade of white. So it was like, gunmetal gray is the one. It was pretty funny because, he had imported it for his brother, who then went and bought another car, didn't want the 32 anymore. So we go get it registered, and, I bought it being American and technically the first Australian owner. It's pretty nuts. But yeah, once you got it, it was like my daily driver basically, which was a bit of a risk considering how old it was. But that first time that I hit boost, I have been chasing that feeling ever since. Because I think I was taking it to work actually. Pulled out of my little tiny, before I had this place, I had a tiny little shoebox of a garage. I couldn't open the doors, and I was working on the car just like I am now, in that garage. But anyway, I turn out of the garage and I go up the laneway, and I'm in first gear, and just out of nowhere, I'm like, it's time to feel what the boost is like. So I step on it in first. It was my first four-wheel drive turbo car ever. And I'm in this tiny little laneway trying to, come on to boost in this thing. And put my foot down, got my hand on the gear shift, planted it, and I felt it, and it just, it felt like a 1,000 horsepower car, because that was the first time I'd had an all-wheel drive car, and just straight on the boost like that. And it scared the shit out of me. I ain't even gonna lie. But as soon as that happened, I went to second, and it was like sealed the deal right there. This is the one. I drove it around stock for a long time. I actually drove it around with the boost pill in for close to 2 months And then after that, I was like, you know what? It's time to pull. I got beat by a Nissan Maxima. And that's when I was like, nah, boost pills coming out. Got to go. And then after that, I drove the car around with the boost pill out for, I think, another year and a half. And then the reason I started modifying the car, which was not actually me, if that makes any sense. It was all my friends. All my friends had fast 32s, 33s, 34s, and I was like the slowest person the whole time, every single cruise. And I was like, all right, well, something's got to give. I got to do something. And at that stage, they were basically all fast twin turbo setups. So they, the Garrett 2560s or whatever they are, dash 5s, dash 7s, dash 8s, whatever they are. They all had, pretty quick 400, 500 horsepower twin turbo cars. I was like, okay, cool. Let me get some money together and we'll start modifying. So the first thing I did was put an exhaust on the car and didn't notice any change at all. It was just a little bit louder, which I did like. But then as I pulled my car off the road to build the head, I was going to leave the stock bottom in, stock oil pump, everything, because I had a 93 model, which I thought at the time had the long nose crank and the stronger gearbox. I did have the stronger gearbox, but I didn't have the long nose crank, which I found out later on after it blew up. But we'll get to that. So I pulled my car off the road and I started basically with the intention of going bigger twins for just a more, powerful setup. I wasn't chasing response for twins and all this other nonsense that people talk about. I just wanted to be a little bit quicker. So as I'm in that phase, all my friends have stepped it up to a single turbo setup. And I'm like, all right, go single. That way I'm at least on the same page as everybody. So it took me a little bit of time to finish everything and, get the head prepped and all that. And by the time that I had finished, all my friends are running basically 9s and, 145 mile an hour trap speeds. So I still ended up relatively at the back of the pack, but with a much funner, faster car. So I drove the car around, single turboed, stock bottom in, stock oil pump for, I think it was like 2.5 years. And like every time I got in the car, it was on it, max boost, foot to the floor, like always freaking just on boost everywhere I went. And it lasted. It lasted 2.5 years, stock bottom in, 30 PSI. Like didn't have a hard time. I got, the drag slip right there and the dyno chart there. That one day I decided to go out and take photos. I think it was with the Harbor Bridge in the background. And then that night on the way home, I gave it a hit in third and I just heard marbles. You can go back and watch the video. I heard marbles and shut it down and just limped it home and then started it up. And yeah, that was kind of the end of that era. And originally all I wanted to do was just basically rebuild the 2.6 and keep going. But then that's when I think the OCD part kind of just set in, and it was like, well, I'm already doing this. I might as well do this. And then that's just kind of snowballed into where we're at today with, fully restored underbody and 3.2. And yeah, it's gone a little crazy. Moving forward, what I would like to do, and everybody keeps asking me what power I want to make. I've got a power figure in my head. I'm not going to put that on YouTube just yet because, one, it's just going to be a lot of pressure on me when I go to the drags. It's like, oh, you make this much power, you should run this much mile an hour. Don't want to put that on myself. I'll tell you, I want to try and trap at least 155 to 160 mile an hour in the quarter mile. So whatever power figure you think that makes, that's what I want to make. I'm so against the YouTube claim a power figure and then go to the drag and run 131 mile an hour in a 1,000 horsepower car. Like it annoys me to no end, Like, oh yeah, my car feels like it runs tens. No, it doesn't. This thing is finally built. What I would love to do is start driving not only in New South Wales, but just, around Australia. Like, do events in Victoria, do events in Queensland where I actually drive the car up there. Now, obviously, if I'm driving that far, I'm not going to be going balls to the wall or anything like that. Like, I want to be able to drive it home and not have $1 million tow bill to get it back. But I definitely want to go do events in other states. I'm a little bit apprehensive of going all the way out to Perth. I would definitely ship the car out there, but even then, you guys get dicked around pretty bad when it comes to modifications. So I don't know, yeah. We'll see on that one. I would love to do Race Wars, but we'll see. I'll leave it at that. We'll see. So yeah, I mean that was my way of doing a full detailed owner history, quick and dirty, on my 32 GTR. And I could definitely say obsessed is a great word to use. Speaking of obsessed, that is going to basically be a new playlist series that I'm going to make up. I'm going to try and go around, get a bunch of the GTR owners here, and just let them tell their story. Or go for a ride along and we just tell the story. Because I find that interesting. What made people turn to a GTR? What made people pick these cars over anything else? And I will say, once you actually drive one of these things, and I know you guys have heard this before, once you drive it, it's like no other car. And I mean, I've driven plenty of fast cars before. The way these things deliver power is just completely different to anything else. So what I'm going to do is go around, see if I can't get some more people to share their obsessed story, and I'll share it with you guys. If you are one of those people that wants to share their story or join me in a way of sharing that story, shoot me an email. I'll put it down below right here, and we'll make that happen. Alternatively, what you can do, I mean, I don't want to just limit this to Australia. I want everyone to do this. So if you have access to a camera, if you have access to a phone, flip the camera around, tell your story, let me know, freaking upload it to YouTube and I'll add it to the playlist. I don't care if it's not my video. This is about getting the story out there for everybody. So let's make it happen. So that's my obsession story, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, and I will definitely see. Oh, the AMA. So the AMA is coming. It's coming up next after this video. I'll probably release it maybe a day or two afterwards. But the AMA and this video are kind of linked. So you'll see a bunch of the GTR related questions are omitted from the AMA because they've been answered in this video. And I'll say this at the beginning of the AMA as well, just so that way, those people aren't like, why did you forget my question? I didn't. It's here.